Hey guys, how's it going? Another Crypto Bros video here. We're doing an AMA with Stuart right here, CEO of Lamden. We'll actually be touching base on a couple other things, see where their project is leading up to. But yeah, what's up, Stuart? How you doing?
Good, good. How are you guys?
Good, fantastic. It's a good morning so far. So for sure, for sure. So I guess we could just kind of get the ball rolling. Can you tell us a little bit about like what Lamden is and like what they're working for and stuff like that? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So our target is to create accessible blockchain technology for people, and so that's kind of a broad scope and it encompasses many things. So when we started Lambda, we saw that everybody's talking about blockchain, but not a lot of people actually understood what blockchain was for. Mm-hmm. A lot of people are saying, "Oh, I'm just going to put a blockchain on it; it's going to be more secure." Things like that, or they might say, "Is blockchain good for my business?" I don't know. Everyone's been talking about this, especially within the last year. And once you start digging into it as a developer, you realize that the documentation, the resources are pretty poor. If you were to go and try to learn how to develop a website, there's tons of resources, not just like some YouTube videos or a Udemy course or something like that. There's software that exists that has pipelines for how you're supposed to build an application, and it helps you through that process.
Right.
Nothing like that exists with blockchain right now. You either get something that's used off the shelf, like you can fork or clone Bitcoin, or you can try to run Ethereum and Solidity, but your options beyond that are not too plentiful. And the ones that do exist, like Hyperledger, use obscure languages like Go and Node.js, and that's a big factor in people not picking them up because they have to learn Go's obscure compared to a lot of other languages. So that's a big barrier to enter, especially if someone's just trying to see if it's good for them. So what we set out to do is to create these developer tools that allows people to essentially dip their toes into the water and then develop more and more and more. And then once they're at a point that the application is fully fleshed out, they can deploy that out and create things like that. Now, what that has snowballed into is a custom blockchain as well. So originally it was, let's just create these tools, the pipelining and things like that. Mm-hmm. And then we're talking with people, and the more we're talking with advisors and people in that matter, we realized that the blockchain itself is one of the core issues that people are not having too much fun with. And if we can fundamentally create the blockchain that also is modifiable itself, that's even greater. And so some of the decisions that we've made, like we are writing it in Python. Python is the second most popular language in the world. It's all open source. There's no proprietary software, and it's very simple to use. That is a design decision that we've made because we want people to be able to pick it up and not necessarily know how, not have that barrier. If you know Python, even if you're just playing around with it with something completely unrelated, there's a good chance you can read this code and see what it does. For like Hyperledger's Go is only for network applications. So unless you're like a network architect, like a very, definitely like later on in your career, you might not know what Go is. And even if you do know what Go is, you may have not used it ever. And so that really sections off the population that can access that. Along with that, we saw that smart contracts, they really do a lot. And they do a lot, not necessarily in a good way. The things that we use smart contracts for, when Vitalik was making Ethereum, there's this concept called Turing completeness. And for simplicity, it just means, can you have a loop of code execute forever?
Right.
And what that really then implies is that the complexity of said system is unbound, and you actually will never know what it executes, because it could execute forever. You could modify a whole bunch of things as you're executing. It's a very, very complex domain, but it's what runs this video conferencing call software that we're using today, for example. It wouldn't be possible with Turing programming, most likely. However, we don't use a lot of the complexities in smart contracts. Smart contracts are mostly to keep track of people's things, right? Mm-hmm. And so we have this very, very big system that can do a lot, and this very, very small actual application space. And so what has happened is you've probably heard about like these hacks, like the parity hacks. Right. It's because there are a lot we're really good at seeing, okay, the security of this space, but because the possibilities of what you can do and what you can introduce, and even down to like injecting little bytes and poking little things around these smart contracts, they can behave in strange ways that we don't know. And so that's what happened with the parity hacks. Augur, which has the REP token, actually had to port their entire token over to another smart contract because their problem that was basically unfolded in security audit that they had was unforeseen, and it was down to the compiler. So they did everything right. They created all the security tests in that domain, and this problem existed outside of that domain. There's no way for them to know unless they boiled it down to the actual operations. That's a really big problem because when you're saying, okay, this application is going to hold, potentially millions of dollars worth of assets to somebody, especially on Ethereum mainnet, you want to make sure that it works. Right. You want to make sure that someone can't kind of poke it and then deflate it. And that was a big controversy that happened with DAO early on. That's what caused the hard fork between Ethereum Classic and Ethereum. And that sort of concept is something that still exists in Ethereum to some degree. Mm-hmm. They've made some strides, but the core of it is that the Turing completeness is too complex. Mm-hmm. We don't need all that complexity. So Lamden differs that Ethereum has a virtual machine, so it emulates a computer on the blockchain. It's the world computer. But really what we're doing is more like database access control, because we just want to keep track of people owning things, and that's it. And now that might be, you say, okay, well that's what Ethereum does. But if you wanted to model a physics game engine with Solidity, you could. Yeah. It'd be very expensive in terms of gas, and it wouldn't be feasible, but you could. You can't do that on Lambden, but you don't want to do that. We cover the entire space of Ethereum's application space. Yeah. And enough more for some creativity, but not so much that there's a whole bunch of these errors and bugs. Like you can't essentially poke memory locations, for example, in our virtual machine because we don't have a virtual machine. We just have transaction comes in, it runs some logic on that, then the output is updates to a database. So it might be, say, remove 5 points from my balance, add 5 points to your balance. But those are database rewrites. It's not to say at this memory location increase this by this many bits. That's where you start to get in trouble. Right. And so that's a really big kind of point that we try to make is that we can essentially simplify it and limit the scope. We hope that a lot of these security risks don't happen.
Right. No. Okay, cool. That's awesome, man. One thing that I kind of like wanted to like kind of go over to is like I know that Lambden also has Saffron, Clove, and Flora too as well. Could you like briefly introduce those and what they all kind of do on your basically your protocol and everything?
Yeah. So we have this blockchain. It's very nice and it does some things that people understand it. That's good. Yeah. But from your perspective, you don't even know if you need a blockchain right now. If you're trying to make a piece of art, you don't go ahead and you make the medium, or you select the medium first. You generally have this idea that you want to make this application, and then you find the tools to do it. So that's what Saffron, Flora, and Clove are. Saffron essentially gives you this empty box, which you can play in, and so it will give you an empty blockchain. This blockchain could be Ethereum blockchain, could be a Bitcoin blockchain, could be a Cilantro, Lambda's blockchain, and that allows you to kind of poke and prod it with coins that you just create, so they're all in your environment. You can test out smart contracts in there. You can try out like API calls, integrating with like web application if you want, and it's all contained inside of a box. So you can take that box, and once you've done messing around with it, save it, put it somewhere else on another computer, put it on 10 different computers, have 10 different nodes, etc. It's a really good way to poke around and do things.
Okay.
Now, you have this empty box and you want to put things in, but where are those things that you want to put in?
Mm-hmm.
Smart contracts right now, a little known fact, if you're not in the developer, like an active developer in Ethereum, is that there isn't a centralized package manager or place where all these smart contracts happen. You pretty much have to copy and paste them from GitHub, and it's in plain text. And if you program at all, you'll know that that is a very strange way of doing things. Generally, software packages are held in what are called package managers or package repositories because you want them siloed off and officially distributed by the party, especially with smart contract, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you think, this code's on GitHub, well, it's all open source, so I can fork it, I can pull it, I can make some modifications and say it's an update and it's actually malicious code, and then trick you to download it, and then you're compromised, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the likelihood of that happening with these Ethereum smart contracts, unlikely. But that's because the people who are making these smart contracts know what they're doing. You start to get into trouble when people who just want to play around start making these contracts, and then mistakes happen. Human error happens. And so Flora is standardizing all of these, making sure that the package is what the package is, and then allowing you to download that into your box really quickly. So now you've downloaded all these packages into your box. Starts to behave the way you want. You have like it'll depend, right? You either have an Ethereum box or a Lambda box, and those are different smart contracts. But let's say you have like an ENS type system that takes the addresses and makes them human legible. You have a token system. You have a lot of cool things in this ecosystem for some sort of online community that you're making.
Right.
So now it's not really worth anything if you can't provide a medium for people to enter into this, right? So you have this box with siloed off, and that's where Clove comes into play. Clove, using atomic swaps, allows, I think we access like 95% of the crypto market, people to trade tokens directly into that box. So if you say, I have, these super bucks, they are the currency of the community, and I don't want to add a payment processor because that's 3% and it's really expensive and it's hard to do. Well, you can just use Clove and say one super buck is always going to be 1,000th of a Bitcoin, or I want to peg it to this price. And you can then say, all right, cool. My users can come in. We can accept these tokens as a mechanism to help run the community, and we can have this token do certain things inside of that as we've created inside the box packages. So Clove opens that up, and now you have this thriving community with a lot of working parts, and now you're there. So you started from nothing, and then as you iteratively add things, now you have something great. And that whole process is designed and engineered to be kind of around the user experience of having an idea, and then you are exploring as you search for the right solution, and then as you come across the correct solution, opening that up to the world so it can be successful. And so that's pretty much what we're doing with those software. Pieces.
That's awesome. I know, like, for right now, I know Clove, you actually have, like, the beta basically launching Q2, right? So
Yeah. So Clove, we decided that atomic swaps right now are really hot. Everyone's hearing them. And so we figured it'd be a perfect opportunity to focus more on Clove, because when we try to explain Saffron to people, they might not see it being as applicable in the cryptocurrency sector.
Right.
So with Clove, yes, we've done ERC20s, we've done Bitcoin-based, and when I say Bitcoin-based, ton of your everyday currencies are Bitcoin based. Litecoin is Bitcoin based. Zcash, Dash. A lot of these big boys are, and then anything Ethereum based we can certainly as well. And then we're looking at Neo. Neo has the capability to do it. Anything that has a smart contracting platform is able to do it.
Right.
And so we're automating it to the point that anyone who wants to do this stuff, do these atomic swaps and trade tokens without any sort of exchange, can do that. And the implications of that are very large. You start to look at tokens as units of some application or some digital thing.
Right, that's awesome. Do you actually, as far as like your roadmap goes, like I know you have Clove, like the beta is basically launching. So like, when do you foresee like kind of like the whole main net, I guess, to be launching for Lambden?
Yeah. So right now we're working on networking features so that everything happens in a trustless, decentralized manner. Part of the Lambden system is this open governance model where we have different nodes doing different things. So some people mint the blocks, some people store the blockchain, some people look and pass and verify that transactions are legitimately created. And this allows us to distribute the workload and create things like benefits like low transaction fees, very fast processing of blocks. The more nodes you have, the slower the system generally goes. So with Bitcoin, it's very slow to propagate out and have a confirmation. Also, you need to catch up like full sync, and you have to have the entire blockchain all the way up to date. But for our system, only the master nodes really contain that, and it allows you to kind of slimly enter the system without having the hardware. There's no mining. Like Nano or Rayblox and IOTA, proof of work has happened on the client side, so it's pretty easy to be a participant. And that we're looking at, we say Q3, Q4, we want that out. And this will accompany, of course, the Clove atomic swaps. Our big thing is now these tokens, the Lambda Tau, are ERC20s, but we will be demonstrating, okay, this is it. This is exactly how you can create this as well. We have this box, you put things in it, now we're opening it up with Clove, and now we can atomic swap into it. It's a perfect demonstration of this type of project.
Right. So it's kind of like making it like user friendly, you know, like kind of just having access, making it accessible to everybody. That's awesome. That sounds really cool. What do you believe, like right now in like terms of like competition, like where do you see that like kind of affecting Lambden?
And also, I kind of wanted to ask as well, like for the adoption wise too, like when with your competition, how much easier it is for your adoption compared to your competition as well?
Sure. So we could talk. It depends. Like typically, I would instead of kind of blanketing the entire competition, it's probably a little more, I guess, effective to talk about specifics. So, you know, people say Aeon or Landchain.
Yeah.
Trying to think of other ones.
I know I've heard Dragon Chain too as well.
Dragon Chain, that's a good one. We can talk about that. And then some people say EOS. But so let's talk about these. So Aeon is, so there's different tools for different jobs. Aeon is Ethereum based. They base their code off of Ethereum. Their head guy was involved with the Ethereum Foundation, and so their code base is very heavily inspired by that. We are not. We see that there's fundamental flaws with Ethereum, and we question why Ethereum hasn't been adopted by larger organizations yet. And we know the answer. It's security, right? And so we strive to be not Ethereum in our own class, and I think that puts us in a different sector altogether. We do solve some of the same problems, but in different ways. Now, Aeon will probably say, oh, we do more than atomic swaps. We also allow you to to activate arbitrary code by doing an atomic swap on one end. Put a token into a pinball machine, and then you're playing pinball. You're not getting a pinball token out, right?
Right.
And so that suggests that we cannot do that, but that's not true. And so we just call them like atomic triggers, where you trigger some action based on something happened before. It's the creation of said trigger is not unique or at all difficult. If you can do an atomic swap and you have control over your system like we do, you can implement an atomic trigger very easily. And so because we can and we will, it's more focused on the Ethereum influence versus the complete from the ground up.
Right.
And so that also brings us to Landchain. I'm not too sure about what Landchain's trying to do, except that they're trying to be somewhat interoperable. But they're also based on Ethereum, actually a lot more directly. They're pretty much just a fork of the Ethereum code base.
Right.
So again, you have to think, what problem are they trying to solve, and why can't do that itself? And I think that also separates some of these differences. If Ethereum is Ethereum, and it's highly regarded, and so just to kind of fork the code doesn't make a lot of sense to us, because it doesn't solve core problems. You're just kind of patching things and making minor tunings.
Right.
Zero code up. Dragon Chain did something similar, right? And so Dragon Chain also is written Python, which is cool. It's hard to gauge where Dragon Chain's at, because their public repository hasn't been updated in a long time. However, you hear that they're working on it private. It's hard to know, but based on the public repository, it seems like they have a decent amount of work to do. However, that's not really, we have a lot of work to do too, so that's not really a difference or something to hold against Dragon Chain. What makes Dragon Chain different is that it's primarily trust-based. And so they actually don't use a consensus mechanism like DPoS or POS or proof of work or anything that makes it trustless. It's primarily trust-based. So for us, that's just a database. These are systems that exist already. Like eBay or Apple have decentralized systems that exist internally for things like fault tolerance. So if the database goes down, or some networking infrastructure gets broken or torn up, that it can not destroy your iMessage service, right?
Right.
So these things exist already. So it's interesting that they chose that. So primarily trust-based isn't very appealing to us. And I don't know, based on what, I've gone into their Telegram, and so people say one thing. To be honest, I've read the white paper, and I've read the documentation, and this was several months ago. I don't know if they made any particular changes, but at that time, there was no plans to make a mainnet. And so they're really more of licensing their software, is how they put it. The token represents some sort of license that allows you to use the software in some certain way. That software is never going to have a singular network. It's trust-based. It can't really, right? It's more of, some enterprise is going to adopt it, and that's good for you, type of thing. And so it's much different. Like the nuances, they're just nuances on the surface, but they actually cascade down and make a very, very different end goal, because we're very much on the trustless, decentralized nature. And so then EOS, I think a lot of people are kind of comparing us in that way. They say DPoS, high transaction throughput, and they say EOS, right? But we're a lot different than EOS. EOS has some level of centralization, and so the way that they process transactions fast is that they have a centrally managed group of servers, and you have to trust that EOS is good.
Right.
And we don't necessarily like that. We want to see networks acting like political sorts of organizations. The fact that different groups can decide different things and mutate and organize different ways and create different behaviors. EOS, they want to do that too, right? But they do that in a more decentralized way. We're trying to establish that you don't have to have a centralization mechanism to do that, and you can still have this network. Furthermore, EOS is built in a programming language called WebAssembly. WebAssembly has not been released as a version 1 yet. It's very, 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 very new.
Right.
So what it asks you to do is to say, I don't know a single person who knows WebAssembly. I know several people who know Go. And you heard me talking about how adoption for Go is very, very hard because it's so slim. Yet I know people who know Go and have worked in environments with Go. I know no one who knows WebAssembly. So it's taking that Go, that Go pie, blowing that up. It's like 1% of 1% of 1%, right? Might be interested in WebAssembly. So I think it's a hard ask to your adopters and to your users to put down what they're using and pick something up, especially if they don't know what it's going to be like. And so we're trying to not do that, right? We want people to pick it up. It's friendly, makes sense, it's intuitive, and they don't have to worry about too much moving forward with it.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like, what do you feel like is like the most important thing, like as like a community that Lambden is trying to like kind of build up to as well? What do you think like the one thing that like the community could bring forward to Lambden that would help it like grow?
Yeah. So you mean like just the general crypto?
Yeah, general crypto community. Yeah, I guess adopters too as well.
I think like we're really interested in the tech and what this means in terms of decentralized systems. I think some of the core roots of what blockchain is has been lost in the last year because we had a pretty big rally that was based on a lot of speculation. Right. So a lot of people kind of flew in and they don't really know what this is, but there's a difference between 2013 and today in terms of the way that projects kind of came about. We're trying to keep true with those earlier projects, which were very much results-driven and engagement and getting people excited and involved in this technology. So for people to be, what can they do is really learn a lot about what we're doing, interact with us as a community, all the members there. We have community managers that are there to answer questions all the time. I'm on there as well, and I'll answer questions for people to educate them. But we want people to know what this is. And I think a lot of people might feel daunted by blockchain because it has a lot of foreign concepts, but we've been there and we can break it down for people. So just to educate people and give them knowledge is something that we find very valuable.
Right. I mean, yeah, I can definitely agree with that, especially since, just looking at the market right now. Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, I guess that's kind of like me and Danny here, kind of like same base right there too as well, because that's realistically what this community was based out of. Yeah. It kind of just started with me and like a couple other friends, just wanted to get together and meet up on a Wednesday night. To discuss about like Bitcoin and what it was and stuff.
Yeah, we would hold meetings like all the time just to show people what cryptocurrency is all about and what it can actually offer and the technology behind it being blockchain and how innovative it actually is. But also I wanted to go further into depth with maybe your team. We spoke a lot about your competition and your project. Let's talk about your team and how you constructed them.
Yeah. So in broad strokes, is that how you want it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Sure. So the way that I look at business is very like intrinsically motivated and self-managing in terms of like autonomous. So if people are intrinsically motivated and actually excited about what they're doing, they oftentimes because they want to do it, they'll do it well. Right. And if you can capture that, then you're really on the path to something great because you don't have to worry about a lot of things such as motivation or passion and things like that. And so it's really about sourcing the people and trying to figure out what makes them excited and then trying to apply what you're doing and to what that is, and then they can really start to get involved. And that's like my MO. That's believe that very, very strongly.
Yeah, that's good.
As far as like your team members goes, like what like are you currently like right now? Are you like hiring still? Like, are you still working with developers and things like that too?
Yeah, yeah. So we're looking to onboard probably 2 more developers in-house. We have out-of-house teams too that support us,
Mm-hmm.
but a lot of the crucial roles need to be in-house, so we need to ramp up that team. Also, we're looking at some sort of additional business person to help us out. Like we're starting to talk more with some. We're trying to open some doors, and we want to be prepared for additional plays, let's call them, and conversations. So we want to generate ultimately revenue that can be fed back to the business. The way that the business works is very hub and spoke model, where the hub is this open source software blockchain. And these spokes can be these individual business units outside of that, and that can fund the hub without muddying things up. Because if the hub gets spoiled, or people, corporate interests try to get into what the core blockchain is, it can start to destroy the integrity of the project. And so we believe very heavily in the project and decentralization altogether. And so what we will do is create applications with Lamden outside of that can mutate to certain industries, but then are based on this agnostic software.
Right.
So we're looking for we can aid in that as well, so we can really have this kind of two-pronged strategy approach where it's core tech application.
Right. Okay. Cool. Like, I mean, in terms of like I guess like marketing, is Lambden like focusing on that too, or is that something that you guys are like kind of bringing on like once you release like your actual working product and like your mainnet and everything like that?
Yeah, so it really does depend what marketing is. I think a lot of people say, oh, you need to do more marketing, and when you try to ask specifically what does that mean, generally what it means to them is I just want to see it on the front page of Reddit more, or I want to see it where I go more, or I want there to be more activity around this project, which is a very vague sort of deliverable for marketing, right? How do you do that? And so I think what we can do is we can get a lot of grassroots initiatives in place where a lot of this information is bubbling from the bottom up, especially during now as things are kind of settling with this entire thing. People are kind of going back and saying, wait a minute, what is this stuff anyways, and doing their research. If we can target that, it starts to build on up, because you can throw money at this problem. You can spend so much marketing, and it doesn't do anything, right? Right now we're planting seeds. The software is still being developed, so we don't want to go full force in terms of like an active direct marketing approach. We don't necessarily believe that works. What we believe works is get the people who are excited about it, just like we run our business, to start propagating that information around. And then you can really have a very, very vibrant self-marketing community, right? And the way that you do that best is also through education, because you might see that, I see this all the time, I see people who are diehard fans of certain projects, but if you try to bring up a critique, or you try to ask for a little more information about the technical viability of said project, they will hush you down, or they don't really know. Right? Like, example is Neo has Felix transactions, which opens up a security hole for spamming the network. And that's why proof of work exists. If you bring this up with certain community members, they will just tell you, oh, it's for adoption, which makes sense. And don't worry about the spam attack because it hasn't happened yet. So that kind of, I believe, it hurts the integrity of the project. And rather than trying to get people to believe, because that's a conflicting interest, right? You want to see the best project, but that is not a decision that you want to. That makes it the best. It's a flaw. So to then to your community say, accept both of these as true is a uncomfortable balance. You just can't, right? So you either get mad at somebody when they bring it up, or you just say, I don't know, they're worried, they're working on it. But to inspire pure confidence, you have to have an answer to that, and you have to have the best software. So that's why we say come to the community and learn about it. We have nothing to hide. We don't have that's going to gape a whole hole on it. You're not going to be kind of jammed down your throat. Like the people who talk about this are really passionate because we put a lot of time and effort into making sure this is the most robust system that exists.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. One of the things that I would focus like on in terms of like just this whole world that we're building. I feel like security is definitely like a big issue. Regardless of everywhere that you go. But one thing that like I kind of like wanted to like clear up. So like is Lamden gonna be? Lamden is gonna be like its own like blockchain, realistically, right? Like it's gonna be like something like I could possibly run onto like once the mainnet is like out and things like that. So like, okay, will I be able to like use like Flora, like Clove and Saffron to kind of like build like my own, like I guess you would call like infrastructure too as well, right?
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, 100%. So our main net plays into this extremely well. Our main net is for atomic swaps, and we have high throughput. We have no fees for atomic swapping assets. Yeah. And so that's our main net. And what that really is like, all right, we have this scaffolding, we have these rails, so now you have the mechanism. Like instead of having to go out to an individual and say atomic swap with me, there's this main network of people who are doing just that you can plug into. And that's what that main net of Lamden is. So that allows you to then create these things, plug it in, streamline it, and then get going as soon as possible, as fast as possible.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome then. I mean, we'll definitely have to look into that once you guys' mainnet is out.
Yeah, definitely.
for sure. But I mean, yeah. I mean, anything you want to clear up, Danny? Anything else?
I kind of wanted to ask you, like, who formed out your token metrics, going in live, like. Sorry?
What specifically about them?
Just kind of like, how did you come up with your supply? How did you circulate token sale wise? Yeah, how did you come up with your token?
Sure. So we experimented with that a lot, and so like we didn't want it to be a ton of tokens, just because I don't know. It's definitely like a feeling thing, right?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, it's psychological, right? So you pick a number that's not too high because then there's a ton of them, and not too low because there's not too many of them. We kind of came around this number where we're like, okay, this is a good middle ground where it seems like there's enough of these things that they exist, but there's not too many that it just kind of drowns it out. So that like what's one unit of these things? In terms of the raise, we actually we're going to do a much bigger raise, but in terms of market, just like the sentiments of those types of projects and our actual needs of our budget, the things that we need to do, it makes no sense. We've seen like some projects with minimal funding become extremely successful, and then we've seen the opposite with very large projects are not very successful. For example, this would be IOTA, massive project, and I think they had a raise similar to us, right? So that's tremendous. That's great. The classic example is Bancorp as well, where they had a massive raise and nothing to show for it. So we wanted to be on the right side of things. So that's how we chose our metric, is that, make a smart decision about what we're doing, plan things out, and then do what's right for the community, because that is who's supporting us at the end.
Right. Cool. Awesome, man. That answers my question.
Not a problem. Awesome. Well, I mean, realistically, that's basically it. It was an honor, Stuart. It was awesome having you here.
Stuart. Thank you.
That was really awesome. But yeah, definitely.
Is there any way Crypto Bros could help you out? Just the last thing to cover up. How can Crypto Bros help you?
I mean, I think this is great, because I mean, like, you guys can show this to your community. That's enough help for me already.
Thank you.
In terms of that, if there's any other questions, feel free to reach out. If there's any clarifications or any misunderstandings that people have, or if they're trying to understand one concept, if you guys are like, I don't know, pull me in, and I'm there to educate.
Definitely. That sounds great.
Well, I think we'll end it off with that. Well, thank you so much, Stuart. It's an honor having you here. Crypto Bros out then.
Peace out, guys.